3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1, clap. Yeah.
Well, you know why I don't eat bologna sandwiches anymore.
Probably the same reason that I didn't eat hot wings for a good decade.
You threw them up out your nose?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were talking
It was
about before
so bad.
we got on this conversation because Robert's kids were sick, and then I was talking about when my son Michael, who's my youngest, and he's 13, gets sick. He likes to vomit in the sink and leave his hot pocket chunks just right there where the plug is, just along the plug. And then there's things that happen to you which turn you off from foods forever. So like you get sick
Blowing
with
them out your nose. You will
Oh.
never. You don't want that again for like 20 years.
I
Oh
remember
yeah, I mean it's funny. It's funny how like that hot sauce, that Frank's hot sauce, it just kind of like singes all the hairs on your nose coming out.
and you're
Yeah,
probably like, this
that
isn't
vinegar is just that constant burning.
It's like, what is this doing to my insides as I'm ingesting
Oh.
this the whole time?
Oh yeah.
But the
Oh, yeah.
like eating as much spaghetti as you possibly can and then waking up with the stomach flu like 7 hours later is not. I remember.
Huge load of noodles.
So we lived in kind of like a double wide trailer with my dad at the time. My childhood was a very whoever could get their act together for 3 months at a time got custody. So anyway, so I remember like the bathroom being on the other side and me just rolling over going, "Bwah," just like opening the faucet. And then me trying to get to that bathroom and like then you're doing the hands thing and then you're on all fours. And I remember being on all fours, like racing on all fours, just purging on the ground, leaving a trail. And I think I got to the toilet with like the last little bit of the and then I just rolled over. My dad was kind enough to clean it up, so
Yeah,
not fun.
Go ahead,
Steve.
Robert.
I was just say that's always the hard thing. Like being a parent is like I'm okay. It's like there's things I'm okay. I can see other people's blood. Don't want to see my own. I don't want to see other people's throw up. It just makes me throw up. But as a parent, you're like you got to pull that crap together because you got to be a parent here. And so it's real hard because you're like, don't throw up. And you're like trying to like breathe through it and tighten all the muscles so you don't throw up along with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So when I was a kid, somehow my mom thought it was a good idea that when someone was nauseated, she'd bring them a towel and say, throw up on this towel, which is the dumbest idea ever because now you have to deal with chunks on a towel before you can throw it in a wash. So it was just so funny. And then there's, of course, the famous story where my sister walks into my parents' bedroom and she says, "Mom, I think I'm going to..." And then just Ralph's all the way down the side of the bed and onto the floor. And...
Well, that last year when I got the food poisoning and that guy was like slow rolling me in his BMW as I was holding onto the side of the UPS truck. And like...
Slow rolling you? He was what?
He was like... So I'm facing northbound. He's coming southbound off of this very high-end neighborhood road. And I had pulled over and had been like laying on the ground listening to season 2 of the Cold Podcast as they were trying to get a driver up to replace me just on the hot aluminum, just dying from some like bad Taco Bell. And then I tried to make myself get sick.
Is there ever any good Taco Bell? Actually, there is good.
I
had a Mexican pizza. That thing was pretty damn awesome.
But I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, they're sending me a driver, and I try to make myself get sick because I would rather be sick and feel better than sit there. And I'm sitting there. I couldn't make myself get sick, and about 30 minutes later, it hits me, and I'm like laying on the ground, and I go like this. It's time. And so I grab the handrail, and then I sit up, and this guy's doing like 5 miles an hour looking at me as I experienced for the first time in my life projectile vomiting, which was like a 6-foot straight line.
Oh, yeah.
And then it is the creepiest thing. You're like, oh, I'm a fire hose. And then your mouth opens and takes the shape of a fire hose, and this orange foamy stuff comes flying out of your mouth. And he doesn't say... And I'm like vomiting towards the front of the truck. So he's looking at me vomiting on the ground in front of him. And, I'm even like looking at like what the heck. He doesn't say anything. He just slow rolls right past me, puts on his right blinker, and then takes a right down the street. And then I go back there and I lay down. And then the guy who covered for me shows up and literally steps right into the pile of it in the grass.
You didn't have the courtesy to say, dude,
I tried.
don't
I was
step
like,
here.
don't step here. And then he came. I was like, Maverick, don't. And then he's like, what? I was like, oh no. Well, it sounds like a you problem now, fellow UPS coworkers. So that's one of those deals. Is like Robert already says, I can take a month off because I'm replaceable. I also can leave work because of projectile vomiting because I'm replaceable. So either way. Welcome to the PARAcast. I'm your host, Tomas the Boss Fernandez. Getting a sip.
A rock star.
Cold. Refreshing.
Getting jacked up. Tom's getting lit for the show.
Yeah. I'm going to owe Steven a shot of scotch or whiskey here because I told him when I turned 40, 6 months away. Joining us tonight, he got in a night fight with Robin to figure out who would be the lead of their biker gang. It's Steve Koski.
Oh my gosh, yeah. the one in the movies where they tie your wrists
They
together.
tie your hands together.
That seems like a good idea.
Little West Side Story action there.
You should go to the hardware store with Robin and just be like, now that we're in a biker gang, let's get you a chain to hit people with. And then you're like, this is the start of chain. You can build a bit of momentum with it, but if it comes back and hits you, you're out cold. It's just like motorcycles. There's people who've been hit by a chain, their own chain, and there's people who haven't yet.
Yes, I do remember flinging a chain around as a kid and learning that hurts.
Effective weapon. Anyways, is it legal to beat your children in the metaverse? I'm asking for a friend. His name is Robert Wyatt.
I was asking for a friend too.
Hitting your kids' avatars to mow the fake lawn outside in the metaverse. And
Was it like you hear that that sexual assault is going up in the metaverse? And I'm like, log off.
oh no, disconnect. Turn VPN, then you turn into a Russian. After buying his rifle, his next target is foreclosure. It's Kenny Terry.
God damn it! How'd you know?
That credit card payment she showed us is getting high.
Credit card.
36 months, this baby will be mine.
You had to use one of those online things that because no one else would provide him credit, like the Credova or whatever. When you're buying something that's over $200, you're like, "Would you like to finance this?" I was like, "I hope not." Anyways, we've been gone for 2 weeks. I've seen Top Gun Maverick now twice. I saw it on Sunday with my daughter, and it was so nice. I saw it with my son in the IMAX, the Super Digital Theater, where they just throw on the afterburners and all the chairs in the theater start shaking. It is like just one of the greatest, kind of coolest movies you can sit there and go to. Very limited CGI, just awesome stuff. Cool people doing cool things. It is freaking awesome.
That is awesome. We got to see it Friday night. I 10 out of 10 would recommend it. It's nice to see that every once in a while Hollywood can actually pull it out of their butt and make a good show.
Well, Tom Cruise can. I mean, all those Mission Impossibles have always been a pretty decent watch, but this was freaking fantastic. I mean, it's fan servicey. It does enough of the callback that you kind of like get
enough of the callback. Every single phrase is a callback. It's cheesy line after cheesy line. Every other
line. It's still fun.
It was fun. I will give it that. And it was almost a shot-for-shot remake of the first movie. It's just cheese upon cheese. It is fun. It's not great. It's not great cinema.
Here's
this is coming from the guy who thinks A Fault in Our Stars was the greatest film of all time, too. So I mean, I kind of question you a little bit, Steve.
I don't remember that one.
Is
that a Barbara Streisand or?
I have no.
So the funny
that would actually be pretty bad.
The funny thing is like if you sit there and you watch a bunch of these guys who are retired pilots and so the retired fighter pilots, they're fighter pilots doing other things, and when they sit there and they talk about it or you watch them do simulators, the amount of original Top Gun lingo that comes out of their mouth is like that was one of those things that changed an entire culture of like what those guys did. Right? And so when the movie comes up and it's kind of like almost a scene for scene remake, it kind of is. But then it's also like there's at least some development in Tom Cruise's character. I thought it was fun. I thought it was great. I loved it.
It was fun.
You know
there was
what?
No doubt it was fun. We went to the premiere. We got Top Gun stickers and a little pin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I'll tell you what, when they open it up the same way that the original one opens up and they hear the move.
Yeah.
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 And then it starts off with the sun rising and the aircraft carrier at dawn, an F-35 taxiing.
The F-35, and like, does the Navy use F-35?
Yes, they have
18s.
They have the F-35C, and then they have the F-18s going on there, and everyone's hooking up, and you get to watch people do their cool little hand signals and hook up to catapults and fire it away. It's freaking bitchin'.
No, it was a really good show, and it's best if you don't think too deeply about it.
Just go and enjoy it.
If you go and enjoy it, you're doing really, really well.
There's movies that you kind of like that you can't rewatch again because of like plot holes or the way things go. Like this one's like I can rewatch this one. I like it. It's fun. I thought it was
fun once.
I could watch that many times over. It had a P-51 in it. I mean, you had me at P-51.
So it was a good time. Also, this podcast would like to take a shot at the Ruffles Corporation. I bought a bag of jalapeno Ruffles at a gas station, and you know what it was in there? I'm guessing that they hand out the chips per weight and they pass it on. I got a salt lick of the seasoning mix dropped into my packet. So
Lucky.
I had something that was I don't know, an eighth of a pound.
Oh, wow.
Like if you had like an eighth of a pound like burger patty, like something that would be on like a small McDonald's hamburger, and about quarter of an inch thick, just chunk of dust, jalapeno dust, dumped into my bag.
Did you make it last all day? Just take a little chunk off and suck on it?
Well, I probably had to because the weight difference was so bad. I got 7 chips in the damn bag. Screw you, Ruffles.
You should call them up and complain. I bet you they'll send you a free bag.
No, I've already changed. I sent them an email saying I'm a lazy man. So.
Oh man, I mean, I understand being upset, but I mean, slumming that hard, that's just wow.
Title of the show: I'm a lazy man. Anyways, t-shirts. I ordered one of the t-shirts. It's gonna get it. We're gonna see if it's good, and then we'll try to see if you guys want them. And then also my my M&P showed up. Yes, the Delta
milled slide.
That actually is really appropriate. I mean, with the Navy, and having sales on things.
Sales, yes. The so I was talking to them. So my biggest complaint and my biggest thing that I like about this thing is the Delta Point Pro.
Yeah,
I like the Delta Point Pro. I like the way it looks. Besides the battery life and the single button, it's a great dot. And the customer service that you get from Leupold and Stevens is freaking fantastic. I wanted some more screws for the Delta Point, and I called them up, and they were like, well, how many do you want? And I was like, 4. And they said, you're Tom Nelson, you live here? And I was like, yep. And they're like, all right, they're on their way. 20 minutes later, I got a confirmation saying that they were shipped. The whole phone call took me, once I got done pressing the numbers for what department, took me about 35 seconds. And so Leupold is freaking fantastic. And so anyway, it's a Delta Point Pro with forward irons on an M&P. And some things that you learned when you do something for the first time is that even on an M&P, you can't actually cut the optic cut that deep. Because if anyone cannot. Because if anyone's ever taken apart the M&P, you see that the firing pin block is underneath the rear sight. And that firing pin block needs a certain amount of travel for it to actually deactivate and let the striker move forward. Which means that firing pin block is at a certain set height, so unless you're going to get some new fangled firing pin block that no one's going to manufacture, you actually have to cut it just to the depth of the rear sight. Dovetail. And so that makes the Delta Point stand a little higher than these irons. I contacted the guy at DP Customs. He said, I can send you some new irons. They'll be this tall. And then I looked at my holster and said, it will fit none of my holsters with that gigantic sail of a front sight. So But living with this,
that is too bad. I mean, that is genuinely too bad. And I think you're right. The odds of anybody actually making a different plunger for that firing pin safety is next to none, because the M&P is not really that popular of a firearm in the scheme of it. I mean, it's a popular gun, but
it's not as popular enough that people mill it. Their core sells like crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I am happy with it. I am looking to go shoot some USPSA next week. I'm all set up. I got my big sticks. I got my my gun here. I got my holster.
So what does the sight picture look like? How does the dot line up with your irons?
So if you can see there on the screen, you can see the little bump of the rear sights.
Yep. Right at the bottom of the window.
So it's functionally worthless.
You cannot see them at all.
Okay.
Because on every dot, the front glass is always lower than the back part of the dot, because the back part of the dot is higher than the emitter. And so at the front of the glass, it looks like you can see through them, but at the back part is slightly higher, which basically covers up the rear sights. So good news. Good news is if I ever choose not to shoot something like the Delta Point, like the Romeo, all the SIG optics are now in the Delta Point footprint, and so are the EOTech's Flux optic is on the Delta Point footprint. And changing into any one of those optics will let me have the iron sights, and I would freely go get the other iron sights to have a co-witness, except for it just opens up another problem with trying to find a holster, because I think the height of the front sight that you need is, I think, a 4.95, so damn near half an inch tall.
So you can't see the rear sight at all when you look through the window?
Correct.
Okay, so you might as well just knock the front sight off. And
you could knock the front sight or have them there, or not do anything, or it's basically not having irons, but they're there. If it does a Brett on me and completely shears off the optic in the middle of the stage, I got irons and a clear sight picture. So, but
how many screws would have to break for you to push that optic off mid stage?
Two would have to shear off, and they're
unlikely.
They're M4 metric M4s, and so they're kind of thick boys, so they're probably not gonna come flying off.
Hasn't that happened to Brett twice though?
Yeah.
You say unlikely, but one person's had it happen twice already.
I wonder if it's very much how the plate. I always wonder if it's the plate or something else, because at least on a direct mill, you can always kind of witness the screws to kind of see if they're backing out. But on all those other guns with just the plate, as long as it's kind of like hand tight, you can't really tell. The SIG, though, I think you can pull out the firing pin and everything else, and you actually screw those in from the bottom for the adapter plates, and so you technically could check them. But if it depends, if the screws just shear off, they shear off. And so normally a lot of those plates, especially the earlier ones, were all aluminum and whatnot, and so chances of those hanging around forever probably aren't great. So
the ones Brett sheared off were an aluminum plates, wasn't it, Robert?
I think. Actually, I have no idea.
I know that one I extracted for him was an aluminum plate.
Then it was. If that's the case, then it absolutely was, because I don't think he changed anything.
Yep. Everyone, get yourself some screw extractors. Quite possibly the best thing you can own, especially in the carry optics division.
Yeah.
Robert,
is that the same as an easy out?
Yeah, more or less.
Kind of.
An easy out's just a different kind of extractor.
Okay.
So I bought a set that has ones that actually cut the screw head, and then has a separate head that matches with that cut to actually grab the screw and pull it out. And so I can go from a very fine, very small screw and extractor. So it has like 12 extractors and 12 kind of drill bits that cut that reverse thread in the top of the screw to yank it out. And so that has been fantastic, because any type of Loctiting or just kind of seizing, that screw extractor can do it. So it's
I just buy another gun.
Robin's like, eBay, it's your problem.
Good luck, gun broker. No, so, what did I do this week? I listened to the president tell everybody how my 9mm are going to blow somebody's lung out. So I loaded up a few more lung blower routers, because trying to help it out there. I didn't do tons.
I might have bought an additional 80%. I might have. Depends on who you are and who's listening. So anyway, what was the
I would never buy anything like that.
Oh, that's horrible. What was the deal that they were talking about in that 80% rule? How they were talking about they wanted to make the upper receivers to a firearm. So technically, when you were buying an AR-15, you would be buying 2 firearms as the lower receiver and the upper receiver. Did you guys hear anything about that?
That's
like
what they've wanted
a year ago or something.
They've wanted to change that because the AR-15 by its design doesn't actually fall under the definition of a firearm in the way that the ATF wants it to be. And since the ATF is the most honest and upstanding organization in the entire U.S. government, right next to the president, they decided to come up and like change all the rules. And in the process of changing all the rules, they stuck their foot in the mouth because, they did. But the long and short of it is, I don't know what's going to happen. They're getting sued right now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, because when I had my FAL, the upper was they were both serialized, but the upper was the legal firearm and the lower wasn't. So I think it varies from weapon to weapon.
Yeah, it's really weird because the way I wish I had it all up in front of me, but the way the law is written, the lower is the firearm, but because the lower can't actually accept a barrel, it doesn't really comply.
Yeah.
And so it's really kind of a screwy little thing. And so the ATF wants everything to be serialized.
But there's so much history now that it's hard to go back.
Well, it's like
it's not going to stop them from trying. I mean, the ATF has been notorious for that over the past number of years. You see that with the bump stocks, the pistol braces, the 80%. I mean, they have a long history of saying these are completely fine, 100% fine. But then you have the political winds change, and suddenly they're like, now they're not fine.
We want them back. What is that? What is that? Is that a Makita drill, a jig, and a 80% in the same box? You son of a bitch! That's a firearm. What is that? Is that them going to the same place in 3 different boxes, then put in 1 box? Yes.
Oh, that's fine.
That's fine.
Well, and that's kind of the funny thing, and there's a legal term for this, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's basically if the average person cannot understand the law, then the law really doesn't exist, and the law has to be in such a way that that your average person can understand it. And the problem is they've started creating all these laws that are not making any. Well, they're trying to make them laws, but they're not making any sense.
Okay, let me ask you a quick legal question. My nephew texted me earlier today. He's going to school in Utah, has an Arizona driver's license. He's like, I want to buy a pistol in Utah, and I'm like, I don't think you can because you're an Arizona resident. I mean,
Correct.
you could illegally, you could lie to someone and buy a private sale, but you're not supposed to. But you certainly couldn't get one from an FFL because when you give them your driver's license, they're going to be like Arizona.
Well, yeah,
right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
You couldn't do that. You couldn't do that. Correct.
I mean, you just have to make sure that the person you talk to believes that all gun laws are an infringement, and then they'll just sell you the gun.
But remember, Robert, everyone who advertises that all gun laws are infringement and selling a gun is an FBI agent or an ATF agent. So just remember, if Chris, what's his name? To Catch a Predator. What's his bucket?
Oh,
Chris.
that guy.
Chris was it Hayes?
No, it wasn't that.
Chris something
Anyway.
with an H. Because on that show,
why don't you come in here for a minute? Oh crap!
Every 14-year-old boy was a 23-year-old female cop. So just remember.
Yeah.
Kenny.
Yeah. No, that's nuts.
I didn't do shit this weekend in guns. I shot my rifle a little bit yesterday, but that was it.
Yeah. How much living room dry fire with the $4,000 setup is happening on the living room floor?
All my dry fire's in the basement.
Well, all of it because Kenny spent all of their furniture money on that rifle.
Oh, come on now. I'm not that irresponsible.
Almost
furniture
all
on the rifle.
We got Walmart furniture, okay?
You got some
yard
flat
furniture at Costco.
It's so just a question. So when you're like dry firing this, are you like having like small little targets on the wall, or are you like tiny ones? And then how does that actually work with the scope and dry firing with it and getting that like a crisp or clear image?
So there's a company called DFAT that makes a. I don't even know how to explain it. It goes on the front of your scope, so your parallax, you can parallax down to like 5 feet. And MDT makes dry fire targets. You put it 5 feet, and then they equal like what an one MOA target would be.
What do they look like? Are they like 1 by 1 pixel or?
Yeah, they're like an 1/8 inch in real life.
Kenny has
They're
one on his
very
forehead.
tiny.
You can't see it.
Yeah,
They're so
very
small, Robert would even have a hard time cutting them out with scissors.
Yeah, so obviously, because no scope is going to parallax down to that close, so you have to put an adapter on the front of your scope so you can parallax low, and so you can actually.
Well, you're
see.
never going to lose another match, Kenny.
No, I'll definitely still lose.
Yeah, look at
that little itty bitty guy right there. That's what I'm
Shoot
driving.
3 of those across your fingernail, Robert.
If you stand, Robert, that thing's so small. If you stand at 2 yards, it's like that's a 500-yard pistol shot. Everybody, this is how you do that.
You better hold over by about 14 feet.
Hold over by 14 feet. That's when you like bisect the target perfectly, and then you do the start aiming up gradually.
There you go.
This is Elmer Keith
Size
type
of his,
shooting.
size of his fingernail. That's hilarious.
Well, I had extras, and I'm like, why not print them out?
I will say, dry fire and PRS gets me tired much quicker than dry fire USPSA. Throwing around the 20-pound gun a lot, I get tired fairly quick.
I totally understand.
Yeah,
I totally understand.
20-pound pistol's insane.
Now, what do you mean throwing it around?
You like just practicing barricade movement, so you're picking it up, laying down, picking it up, laying down, over and over.
So in one stage, you're not firing from the same position. You might have to be
Yeah, you can shoot from up to like 12 to 14 positions.
Oh,
in a
wow.
single stage,
Yeah.
and you bought a 24-pound gun.
Yeah, so you got to move that with one hand because you're moving your bag and everything with the other hand.
Okay.
It's fun.
You're going to get your sweat on down in the basement.
It happens.
Wait, so hold on here, Kenny. So the 24, what's the advantage of having such a heavy gun?
Less recoil, so you can spot your misses and or impacts easier.
Is that the only advantage?
Boy, I know all about
That's
that.
the biggest
Kenny.
advantage. So, like, a big thing in PRS, if you're shooting the same target multiple times, and if you miss wind, so you miss left or right because wind affected you, if you can't spot your miss and you have no idea where to make the correction.
Makes sense.
Like my 6.5 Creedmoor was 16 pounds, and like I couldn't spot my misses. So if I missed, I was like, nah, fuck, I don't know. We'll just make a guess for the next shot. But this one, like I can spot my miss, so then you use your reticle as a measuring tape, more or less, spot how much you missed by, add that much more mils into your next shot.
Yeah. And
Are
there's
you actually dialing it, or are you just
Wind
holding
we
left or
normally
right?
hold.
Windage.
Yeah, wind we normally hold. Elevation we dial.
On the fly.
Yes.
Wow.
on the clock, huh?
Yep.
You just reach up and go click, click, click.
Yeah.
So there's somewhere in there with the hold on. I know it's been 3 weeks, so we're on a different caliber because that's completely revolutionized the sport. What caliber are we shooting now?
6 Creedmoor.
6 Creedmoor, and this would
Yep.
go into this
What
would be
happened
like
to
a
the
short.
dasher and the arc?
I still have the arc.
Okay, but you had a
Yeah.
dasher, right?
No, I'm going to buy a dasher.
Oh,
That'll be
God.
next year's gun.
Okay, so hold on.
Next week.
Maybe.
Okay. So let me. So on the 6 arc is a short throw like bolt, like a 308 size case, right?
The 6 Creedmoor is a 308. The 6 arc is
Like,
I don't know, 243, a little bit shorter.
could you put it in an AR-15?
Yes, the 6 arc was actually designed for an AR-15.
Okay. So we have a 6 arc case. So there's some magic line between having like an AR-15 type case and a weight north of 16 pounds gets you into an area where you can spot your misses with a 26-pound gun.
Yeah. So like I'm not to this level yet, but like the really good guys, they're not only spotting their misses. When they hit the plate, they actually see where they hit on the plate.
Oh,
And then
And say
adjusting
if
from
they-
there.
Exactly. If they favored the upwind side, they'll actually hold more downwind to make up for it so they don't possibly push one off the side of it.
Gotcha.
You need to get some tracer bullets or some bullets that have a little puff of green smoke or something when they hit.
Some people actually say they can see their vapor trail.
Wow.
I saw a vapor trail off a
They're probably at
off
the
a 45
33-pound
ACP
mark.
yesterday.
Oh,
You know how sometimes when the light's just right and you can
Yeah.
see it.
you
Uh-huh.
see them go there.
And 45 is, of course, the easiest to see because it's a big bullet and they're slowest.
Yeah.
Every now and then you'll see a 9mm.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Oh, I was on the. What was it? I forgot to say. I was actually on. Dave Blanton had a podcast. He actually went and shot the Walker Texas Ranger Open down in Texas, and he was talking about, and we were actually talking about how in a lot of ways IDPA has really stepped up their game, and they're actually punching pretty hard and putting out some really good content for shooters now.
That was a
Content.
solid podcast, Rob.
Thanks. Yeah, it's like IDPA with their rule changes. I mean, they're now they're allowing appendix. They're actually listening to their members. In a lot of ways, IDPA actually is putting out. If you look at the rule set for IDPA, they are, oh golly, the way the stages are set up. I mean, it actually produces sometimes a more fun event than you get with USPSA. And it's not to say that USPSA is better or worse or anything like that. It's just an interesting comparison talking about how IDPA, by its nature and some of the rule changes that they've implemented, it actually is more conducive to introducing people to the game and making better club culture just for shooters in general. But it was a really fun podcast. It ended up being like 2 hours. The first hour was mostly about the IDPA and USPSA, and then it got into some marketing stuff. But that we were just talking about USPSA. But it was really good. I mean, if you get a chance, go over and listen to it. It's on the Humble Marksman's podcast.
The Humble Marksman with Dave Blanton and Robert Wyatt.
Mm-hmm. Emin was there too, but I don't think he talked much. I think he actually talked less than Kenny usually does.
Nice.
Even
I don't think so. I'm about 3/4 way through the podcast. He said at least 20 words, so he's got me beaten.
Oh, okay. Just this once. No, it's really funny because
Kenny's words go up with the weight of his firearms.
Yes, exactly.
The more outstanding debt there is on his credit card, the more he wants to talk about.
So you went and shot that LTD match.
I shot LTD, but it was nothing to write home about. I had one good stage.
You shot it in limited.
Yeah, I shot limited minor. I think I need something to keep me honest. Like when I show up, I need to find who else is shooting limited and is like better than me and say, hey, do you mind? I miss the Tom Nelson, Robert Wyatt days where I could like be, you know how you kind of, we work together and I see how you're doing and you see how I'm doing. And you're kind of holding my feet to the fire and I'm holding your feet to the fire. And that keeps you focused and not like, so I'm shooting the classifier and I fire 5 rounds in the 6th round. I like completely I stop looking at the gun and I crack around into the no shoot. And I'm like, come on. And it's just laziness. And I'm like, if Tom was here, I would never do that because I would never want to give him, that advantage on this stage. So I got to find a way to do that.
Well, generally when you
the easiest way to do it, Steve, honestly, would be if you just started shooting carry optics.
If only you had a gun and a dot. If only you had a gun and a dot.
I've been thinking about knocking that loophole off Robin's gun when she'd never know. It'd be like a year before she found out. Do I risk it and just go start shooting again?
He's like 2 turns on the wheeler fat wrench getting them all. She's like, what are you doing? He's like, you got a bike, Robin. You got a bike.
You switch hobbies.
I think you would have fun if you can get over the learning curve and relax and let it happen.
I still do like shooting irons, although I do notice my eyes are changing. I can't get a crisp sight picture, but I can get a good enough sight picture. Like I can still shoot targets at 25, 40 yards. I can hit the targets. Yeah, even though the sights don't look crisp.
My deal is like once you kind of get used, like the iron shooting still makes you really, really good at it. And once you get used to kind of that movement of the dot and then setting up your grip to stabilize that dot and just like almost treating it as if it was kind of an iron sight, you're just doing it like quicker. It's like stable, bam, 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 and just going through it, like just stabilizing that dot, shooting it, stabilizing the dot, shooting it, kind of like you would like with when you're really on with iron sights. It just feels the same. It just feels the same. The stage planning is ridiculous because you got so many bullets it doesn't even matter. But the other stuff like that, it just feels so good. The other
it was fun shooting limited minor because I could just use everyone else's stage plan, right? Because you shoot the same things in the same positions because I got 24 rounds in the gun. And
I will say, going back to it, I did pull out a tiny iron-sighted gun and I was kind of messing around with that, just kind of like aiming at the targets on the wall. It reminded me of Robert at the Not a Cop match with like, thank goodness he needed 3 reshoots on the first stage, because like there was the transition from going from the dot all the time back to the iron sights. Is like, there we go.
Between
Ding.
between the notch.
And he's like
Robert was
Maverick.
just aiming with the fiber on everything. There's a rear sight on this gun.
You could have knocked that out, and I wouldn't have known for the entire match.
So yeah, it's it is a lot of fun. IDPA carry optics does sound like a ton of fun, but man, with 15 rounds in the gun, Steven, you got to be feeling pretty good about your state chances this year. We got to get you back in IDPA shape. It's like George Foreman. Remember when George Foreman came back and he was like 49 or 50 years old, and he came back, and who did he fight? Michael Moore. Was it Michael Moore or Leon Spinks? It was Michael Moore.
I wish it was Michael Moore. Isn't he the guy who did Bowling for Columbine? Because that'd be pretty hilarious watching that white guy get beat the crap out of.
I was watching something. I didn't know this. I was watching something about George Foreman and his comeback, and then they were talking about something called the cross block, which was a technique of blocking where you would kind of like do this, like throw your arms up and then like kind of like push away, and it would like block like power punchers or whatever. And that like revolutionized George Foreman's career for the second half as he learned this cross block technique. It was the weirdest thing as ever. It's like, that's not a block. And then you're like watching professional boxers do it, and you go, that's one hell of a block. I would highly recommend the cross block.
So Lennon Stonebreaker went to this Colorado IDPA match and came second in stock service pistol. And Stoney and I have traded a few IDPA matches back and forth in stock service pistol, but he decided to wimp out and go to CDP. So he's shooting. It was his 45 bullets I could see going down range yesterday. And he's like, wow, look at the recoil. I was like, this is recoil. He almost did a Tom Nelson and said, this hurts my hand.
It hurts. It's too much. The one thing is like, one Coco went and sent me a thing with his he shot like a B8 with his Glock 21. And he kind of had the same thing where I did, where it's like when I went to the HK and I started shooting it, like I couldn't shoot that thing for crap by myself for like the first like 100 rounds. I'd put out there and be like low, 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 aim, low, and it's just
what?
I don't know. I think it had something to do with like the recoil of the timing or whatever, that it was a little different, or your mind thinks it's a little different. I go into the match and then it was perfectly fine. But I switched calibers, and it's just like the timing gets a little wonky.
That was me, dude. I mean, after shooting this 154 power factor ammo for so long, I dialed it down, and I got it down to like, what was it, 135, and I'm like, this feels like cheating. Yeah,
you're shooting a 20-pound gun.
Kenny, it's a good thing that you and I are like brothers on this heavy gun thing. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Kenny's like, I spent $300 on brass magazines. Got to get that weight up. Yeah. Got to get that brass scope. What is that? A brass bodied scope? Yeah, you bet it is. It's also I got a tungsten scope cover.
Well, it's funny. We were talking on the podcast about that IDPA going to 15 rounds, and Blanton was saying he didn't know if it would really make that much of a difference. I mean, you would see the tack load become a lot more prevalent in SSP because the stages would still basically be requiring certain round counts.
Reload, yeah.
And so it fundamentally, I mean, I don't know if it means that much more, or else you're going to see people just burning that many more rounds to get out of a position.
Yeah, but the tack load is basically the 4-step reload. If you have 4 steps, you can do it. The only problem is with some of those, like it's definitely going to go the way of the dinosaur. People start competing with T-shirts and appendix.
Yeah.
Because then that becomes a pain in the ass to complete a tack load. A reload with retention. Just trying to stuff that thing in there or pull up a piece of clothing or drop it in a pocket. Like generally the loose T-shirt kind of ruins that kind of thing. I would almost like want to compete with the traditional garb, the IDPA vest, which
the fishing vest
will not be seen anywhere else in public.
We call that the shoot me first vest.
And then like the 1 o'clock appendix positioned.
Yeah.
I wonder like how good of a position like that would be for sitting there and going out there and shooting.
And then if I wanted to tack load, I would drop the magazine in the appendix holster. It goes right in and take it off the clock. That's right. Big brain, baby.
Yeah.
Big brain.
Good thinking.
Right? Is
Well,
that
but that's-
illegal? You can't put ammunition in the holster. I'm not using a holster. Stage is over. It finished. Unload and show clear. Magazine comes out. Drop that thing on the ground. Drop that thing on the ground. Rack that bad boy out. Put it back in the holster.
Well, I'm sure
But
that's been discussed. I wonder if it's legal.
But
I
that's the thing. I mean, like, we talked about this. We talked a lot of stuff, but I mean, it's like I don't know why IDPA still hangs on to the reload with retention. It doesn't make any sense, and they proved it through 20 years of fighting in the sandbox that it doesn't make any sense, and nobody's going to do it. But I don't know how IDPA goes away from it because it's such an integral part of what IDPA actually is.
Well, the more low capacity your firearm is, the more you will probably want to have it. The problem is that even the small guns now are no longer what we'd consider low capacity. Like,
But even in Gulf War, I mean, in GWAT, they just have shown that you don't do that. You drop the mag, put a new one in, and you keep
shooting.
going.
Yeah.
And so just this idea that you needed to hang on to these things for so long.
Robert, we're
just in
talking about
case.
7+1 round 1911s. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about 30 and 40 round ARs.
But it's still the point that, like, they're just, why are we hanging on to these things?
I would prefer that.
I understand.
Pistol doctrine. Colonel Cooper developed this pistol doctrine in the 7+1 round era.
Oh, so that's interesting. So Yi Min had a point, and I have no idea if it's true or not. He said, like, back in the day, if they were taught to reload with retention, because if you dropped a 1911 mag, it would whack
Gone.
those things so out of alignment they'd have to be retuned.
They'd have to be retuned. You may not get one. Remember, the Europeans developed the heel release magazine releases for what purpose?
You wouldn't drop the mag?
Keep your freaking mags. You know how far away you are from home? What are we going to do? Make all these? You get 3. You can have 3.
You're behind enemy lines, dude.
Well, and one thing is, like, in that Langdon class, like, the way that we came up with having our magazines bullets down and then grabbing it like that, that's just a happy accident. Because it was the best way that when people were crawling on their bellies not to get dirt inside the magazine. And so they would put it down. It just turned out to be the fastest way. But even the Browning high power, when you hit the magazine release, it had that little magazine break to keep it right here.
Intentionally,
so you could keep your damn magazine. Now, no one thought of an era that you would go into your Walmart and buy 17-round Glock PMags, but that's just kind of what it is. So the lower capacity, you would understand.
The funny thing is we have now gotten to that point in the world, and so I'm torn, right? Because I'm like, okay, well, this obviously the argument for this is no longer a valid argument.
It's valid on the gun that you're competing with.
I don't want IDPA to change it.
I don't want to change it either.
It's what they are.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's at least an option in sometimes limited options that you have. If you don't want limited options, let's say you just want great quality, head over to dominatedefense.com. Get yourself a Mach 1 belt.
I have sweatshirts for you, or I have jackets for you guys. Jason gave me jackets for you guys.
Oh my gosh!
I'll come pick up Steve's and Tom's for him.
Hey,
Done and done.
Oh, thanks. Why don't you let Tyrell Kelsey borrow my pants and blow out the ass too while you're at it? He was like, I start shooting again, and thank you for bringing up my ass. I was like, it's the relevant topics that we cover here on this podcast. The relevant. DominateDefense.com. Use promo code PARA10 to save 10% off. Get a duty belt. Everything's fantastic. Also, GallantBullets.com. Use promo code PUPRO10, save 10% off your order. And then also head over to Precision Holsters. Get yourself a fast holster. The fast holster will not accept a half-inch tall front sight, but no other company will because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, if you got a Dremel tool, I can make anything fit.
Well, I was sitting there, I was about to sit there and order the half-inch tall sights, and then I was like, all I need to do is find thinner washers to go in there, and then I could possibly have the room. It's like, how many hoops do we want to jump through, Thomas? And I'm looking myself in the mirror, it's like, we don't want to
especially for a gun that you're going to shoot for like 1 week and then be like, okay, yeah, the Glock is better.
And then I flip it.
That awkward silence is you agreeing.
I am not saying it's not going to be better. I'm not saying it's not going to be better.
You shoot
It
your
might
shoot
be-
the Glock well.
it might
but
be
I'm
insane.
glad you're at least experimenting.
I'll experiment, and then I'll flip this out for like $1,100. I'll sell it with 2 slides and magazines and all that jazz.
I think if I sold all of my spare grips for CZs, I could get $1,100.
Correct.
Do it.
Jesus.
Correct, and then your foundation would stop settling too because of the weight.
This is
Anyway,
true.
head on over to telegram.com.
Oh, shit.
Not Telegram, Telegram, whatever it is. Ask us questions, answer questions, all that jazz. And Robert's pulling it up, and he's going
Quick
there.
callback to last show.
Go ahead.
Leo DeLeon told me he has had problems with his feet getting ground up with dust and dirt
Oh,
inside
yeah,
his shoes, and he basically just said he basically wears a Gore-Tex shoe to keep the dust out, so that doesn't happen. He says, yeah, his feet are moist, but what are you going to do? You're going to have one or the other.
Yeah.
From Mr.
Hold
Alex.
on. Hold on.
Coco.
I got a solution. It's an affordable solution. Back
Get a
when I
vacuum
first
and just suck it out.
No, wait. So
Duct tape.
back when I first got up to Utah and had helpers during the Christmas season, and it was snowing a lot, my helpers did not want to spend $100 on waterproof boots because they were making $9 an hour.
Tell
And so-
Denitza that it's not that big of a deal. Just get herself a set of
no,
boots.
by the,
Is this the bread bag solution?
This is the go into the
It's nice of you.
nearest
You're
Winco
old
or
enough to
Smith's
appreciate that.
and get 2 plastic bags and wrap your feet in the plastic bags, and then put them in your shoes. Dust.
I remember going sledding when I was like 11 years old, and you'd put on a pair of socks, and then you'd put on a bread bag, and then you put your foot in your shoe, and then you'd go sledding because that's all you had.
That's.
Mhm. And your moon boots. Don't forget the moon boots.
Are we too good to do this? I'm not talking about Asian 30 super comp shooters. You are too good to do this. But for the rest of us, are we too good? No. Clean feet, everybody. Clean feet. Robert.
Just gonna put it out there. Yesterday was the 18th anniversary of the true American patriot, Marv. Remember, kids, do it for Marv.
Listen, I'm not opposed to logging yourself into a steel bulldozer with a 50 cal, and I would just the exit port. In case something goes wrong, I would like to get out of the Killdozer. Because what if you win? This is why Marv was doomed from the start. Because he
Okay,
seals himself.
tell us about Marv.
This
Let's
is the
remind us all.
Killdozer. So what?
The
in 2000
Killdozer.
This guy gets screwed over
True,
by like
true American patriot.
he gets screwed over by the local county government. All this jazz. They put it. It's about like a land deal that his shop's on, and they're basically the guy who's buying it's in cahoots with the city government. And Marv just says, "F it with everybody." He gets
No. You got to set it a little bit better. Marv tried to do everything right.
Correct.
He tried to work with the city. He tried to work with the owner, the previous owner of the place. He's like, I will build the road. And the city, it was this huge like good old boys club thing, and the city just went out of their way to destroy his life. Until one day, the reasonable man became unreasonable.
so
He snapped.
he bought a bulldozer.
He bought a bulldozer. Remember now, he bought a what do you call it? An earth mover? It's a scraper, to so that he could actually build the road. He actually went to the city and says, "I will personally build the road for you," and the city said no.
Because they just wanted him off. So, anyways, and then he starts building a steel sarcophagus that will fit on top, and then puts like
Plate steel.
plate steel and puts like cameras so he can see where he's driving. And literally, while he's building this, people are coming over and talking to them, and then he literally says that God shielded their eyes so they wouldn't stop me. And none of them saw what he was actually doing. So anyway,
No, Tommy, they saw. And like any good American, they hated the government just as much, and they're like, Marv, I'm not going to see anything.
so he puts a 50 cal in the thing, and then one day lowers the gigantic steel sarcophagus on him, so he can't get out, but other people can't get
Can't
in.
get
and this,
in.
And this is where he ends up failing after the radiator gets shot out, but he ends up bulldozing a building, and half of the tracks fall into past the subfloor. So like they go in, and there's a basement. It falls in the subfloor. He can't get out. They can't get in.
Is he pushing over City Hall, or what is he doing?
He's bashing.
Oh,
He's
knocked-
got a list. He's got
Yeah,
a list,
went
and he's
after
going to
all the
different
people
addresses.
that went after him and like wronged him, and he just went to every one of their places and just leveled them.
And so he shoots himself, right? Like
That's why I always say, if I ever like got a time machine, I would totally go back and warn Marv about the radiators, because I just want to see this thing play out a tiny bit more.
because like a radiator went out, but what was it? So there was like this propane plant, and he had a 50 cal Barrett, and he tried to shoot the propane, but his little slot was too small, so he couldn't aim and like shoot at the same time. So design flaw there. But he should have had an exit hatch, because it's that kind of negative thinking that will ruin a man. But no,
I understand that, but that makes the tale of Marv all that much greater.
Well, what?
I mean, he goes out in like a blaze of glory. He knows he can't win, but he's gonna take the town with him.
Well, no, Kenny, how much does positive thinking affect you in a performance?
100%.
100%, right? If
Damn it, Tommy, I am positive he knew he was going to take that town out.
You put the door in because you're going to win. And how are you supposed to go out there and stand on top of the victory that you've just made unless you have a door to get out of the Killdozer? That's all I'm saying. Positive thinking, everybody. All right, Robert, we have
Was
questions.
there any win to that, though?
No, the government sucks.
There was no win. He knew what the outcome was going to be.
He knew what the outcome was going to be. But, same with those people that stood in front of the tanks.
Yeah.
I mean, in Tiananmen Square. I mean, they knew what was going to happen with that.
That never happened. You hear me?
That's right.
Never happened.
Fines for violating city health ordinances after he purchased property with no sewage system. He incurred in fines for improperly dumping sewage from his business instead of connecting it to the city sewer system.
Because they wouldn't give him the permits.
Secretly modified a Komatsu D355A. Oh my gosh!
I love that man. I'm not gonna lie. I actually have a Killdozer Christmas ornament that we put up every year for Christmas.
The best thing is the Count Dankula, Mad Lads episode on the Killdozer. All right, questions.
Hey Kenny, could I be at all competitive using 77 grain 5.56 at PRS?
Yes and no. So there's a guy in South Africa that did that with a 223, and you can be totally competitive about 600-700 yards and in. The problem is on really windy days, it starts blowing the 223 around quite a lot, especially when you're getting like 7 to 15 mile an hour winds, and it keeps changing. It'll blow them around a lot, and then on the farther targets, any wind is hard to make up for.
Is that just because they're too light?
You can, as long as you understand. You got to make your points on the closer targets.
Is it the weight of the bullet that's the issue? 77 grains.
Yeah, 77 grains. And
what if you used the 90 grainers?
I mean, if you can stabilize them, absolutely, it'd help.
Because I mean, like a lot of those bolt guns. I mean, the 223, you can run those heavy 90 grains, but you have to do it out of a bolt gun because the length is too much for a standard AR-15.
Yeah. So I owned a 223 bolt gun, and I shot the 75 grain ELDMs, and I could connect it 1,000, no problem. I mean, it was just fine to do. But once the wind started picking up, I mean, just like 2 mile an hour winds would blow it completely off target.
Wow.
And the wind.
And so, like a lot of time when we're shooting, it's not a constant. Like, the whole time it's 6 miles an hour. Like it'll 6 then 10. Like while you're shooting, and so the 223s get blown around quite a lot.
Because you can be dealing with the wind there, the wind at the target, so the wind at the muzzle, wind at the target, some wind that's coming down at 700 yards, and another set of wind that's at like 500 yards, right?
Yeah.
So you could be dealing with a whole cross-section of wind that is just going to send this thing, help this thing, hurt this thing, and do all that jazz heading out.
So I mean, the average targets are 500 to 600 yards. Like you'll be able to be on those just fine, unless it's a really windy day, but you're going to lose it on the farther targets.
Now, Kenneth, have you changed caliber since the earliest part of the show?
No, not
okay.
yet.
How much is that 6 Creed, right? Is that the one? Is that the correct one?
That's what I'm shooting, yeah.
Okay. How heavy is that bullet?
It's a 108 going 2,900 feet per second.
So, what's the what do you call it? Like the diameter of the bullet. It's 6 millimeter. I'm trying to.
It's 243.
Oh, so it's just a little bit bigger. Not tons, but it
Yeah.
is just a little bigger.
Yes, if you could get a 223 to shoot a 90 grainer at a realistic velocity, like you could definitely be competitive.
Yeah. Interesting.
And even at like 500 and 600, you can be competitive. 2 MOA target, the wind's not going to affect you too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when we start shooting the 800, 900, 1,000, the wind's going to push you around a lot. Yeah.
But what if
They don't you can't switch guns during the match?
No, I don't think so. I don't know.
But what if your AR-15 weighed 50 pounds?
Unfortunately, the bullet still weighs 70.
Oh, I thought it was magic.
I would say try the 75s. I think they're a little bit better BC than the 77s, and obviously the best BC is going to help you in the wind.
Well, I wonder if how.
Yeah, the 75 that I would shoot when I was shooting 3-gun, that thing was infinitely more accurate at distance than the 77s. And I didn't know if it was just my particular barrel, but it was like, oh, this is noticeable.
Yeah, so I tried that when I owned my 223 bolt gun. I tried the 77s too, and the 75s were much more accurate, and they had a better BC.
Okay.
So what's the on a 6 arc? What's the case? What's the case based off of?
It's based off of a 6.5 Grendel.
So 6.5 Grendel. Okay, so that's
Yeah, the 6 arc is more or less a 6.5 Grendel neck down to 6.
Gotcha.
It's
right.
40,000 shorter in overall length and just neck down to a 6.
Well, so I mean, if you have an AR-15, you could just buy a 6 arc upper. And then just compete with that, and that might be probably a cheaper process than trying to get the perfect 223 load.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
So
this is
Rob and I
Alex
were
we're
talking about this. The 6 arcs are actually pretty badass. Like you watch some YouTube videos what people are doing with the 6 arc in an AR-15, like reaching 1,500, 1,600 yards in a 16, 18 inch barrel in an AR.
Yeah.
Like that's actually what the case was designed for. It was designed to be shot in an AR.
Which is funny. I mean, why would, if that was the case, why would the military not go to that instead of whatever that weird round that they're doing that's burning out their barrels?
Yeah, well, I think that's what Hornady was trying to do, right? Because Hornady designed the 6 arc. I think they were trying to get it to become a military.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was learning about that M5 program is that the practice ammunition and the training ammunition that they will be using, and the majority of what they'll be using is a much lower pressure round. But then when special circumstances come up, where the service life of your weapon is probably going to go down because you're in armed conflict, that's when the McSpicy McChicken, the 80,000 psi rounds get passed out.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks who are kind of talking like that rifle's not going to go very far.
Yeah, well,
I mean, it won't hit the general troops.
It'll hit the frontline troops. As far as I understand this, watching some of McCollum stuff, it'll hit the frontline troops, the actual frontline going to be in combat guys.
The ones that are going to go to Ukraine in a couple months.
And then that will be generally tailored to what they need. So they can have it if they need that, or they can have M4s if they need that. But so
yeah, that's a recipe for outstanding success.
Yeah.
Let's just have a number of different rifles all in country at the same different time.
I'll tell you what, that light machine gun that thing's based around is going to kick ass though. That thing's freaking awesome. Lighter than a saw, more firepower, lighter than a 240 Bravo, easier to reload. I mean that thing is, and no recoil, and shoots that thing. That's going to be pretty decent. All right.
From Jeff Smith, how's everyone cleaning their brass? For those who wet tumble, what are you adding to the water? What tumbler, and how do I dry it besides leaving it in the car of a trunk? The trunk of a car. I said that totally backwards. A car of a trunk. It's
one hell of a trunk.
Well, those new Suburbans, they are a chunky fellow.
Candy, let's start with you.
So I use the Hornady tumbler with a Lyman dryer. I had to think about that for a minute. And it's water and then McGuire's car wash wax with Let Me Shine.
And no steel pins?
For pistol, no steel pins. For rifle, I use steel pins and then the Hornady cleaning solution.
Do you deprime first before you tumble your rifle?
On rifle, I do. Pistol, I don't.
Okay.
Robert?
Yeah, I used the Franklin Arsenal. I got 2 of those wet tumblers. I used the McGuire's wash and wax. I actually, the last time I did it, I could not find the Let Me Shine, which is funny because I think I probably have like 12 bottles of stuff in my basement.
Amazon,
But
man.
oh yeah, and so I just used the car wash and wax, and it turned out great. And so I'm kind of wondering if I'm even going to keep using the Let Me Shine anymore. But I don't use pins. If I was doing like low volume stuff, I think I would do the pins, but I'm not a fan of having to deal with them otherwise.
Steve?
I mean, I haven't cleaned brass for a while. I still have the old Midway 1492 tumbler and dry media, corncob media. I still have like 30 pounds of corncob out there.
Steve uses the media until all the media turns into just little tiny pebbles.
He just unscrews it and blows it away. Goodbye, old media.
Take that, you neighbors across the street.
I will tell you,
I'm a little better about throwing my media now out before it's just completely black.
The one thing I miss about dry tumbling is it's like watching a fire. You can just sit down and just watch all the little creations go up and sink down and go up and sink down. It's relaxing.
And you just keep throwing more in until you're getting kind of the right action.
The right action that you're looking for. You know, it's pretty wonderful. I use the Lyman tumbler system. So it's nice and orange, so when it's on the ground you don't trip over it. And then I have a old food dehydrator I got for $20 that has like 10 different levels. I can stack probably about 200 pieces of brass on each level, and so it dries it pretty quick. The solution I use the water in the hose outside. I hit it with a little bit of Dawn, and then everyone's going for the Let Me Shine. The main action that's actually doing the cleaning is the citric acid. You can just go on Amazon and get a freaking 5-pound bag of citric acid, and you're going to probably use less than a teaspoon to dip that in there, and it's going to shine that stuff up. And depending on what I want,
well, that's the thing, Tommy. Is I don't know that it's necessary, because
I don't think it.
I like the car wash and wax because it puts a little tiny bit of a coating on it that you otherwise would have gotten if you used the dry tumbler. That's the beauty of the dry media. Is there's a tiny coating on there which helps when you're reloading. Even if you use the what do you call it, the one shot
or whatever. Yeah.
But the McGuire's car wash and wax, it really seems to be the jam, and it's so darn cheap. I mean, basically whatever wash and wax you can get from Walmart.
Yeah.
I don't think the Let Me Shine is absolutely necessary anymore, to be honest.
Well, I'm same as you, Robert. I've done my pistol stuff a ton without the Let Me Shine and never noticed difference. I use the Let Me Shine just because I have like 10 bottles of it. I might as well use it at this point. But
right.
So generally, how I sit through, I go through it. So I hit it with the Dawn, and I add a little bit of Let Me Shine, put it on there for 3 hours, because that's
seriously?
That's what the Lyman lets me do. And
3 hours.
3 hours.
A lot of time.
3 hours. It just sits there and spins out. Open it up, put the hose back in it, pump out most of that dirty old water, pour that out, set it in there for like 10 minutes, let it spin out some of that dirty crud, pull it out, rinse it. The difference between the Let Me Shine and just doing it with steel pins or just the Dawn, it's just that last little bit of almost like factory new kind of stuff. But I do use Hornady one shot at the end of it. And depending on whether or not I use steel pins, 9mm, I'm hit and miss on steel pins. Depends on what I want to look at. 45, the steel pins are very good at coming out of 45 super easy. So
yeah, ever since I got
there's nothing like
steel pins caught in the flash hole of a 9mm, and it went all the way into the sizing portion, and bent one of my pins.
And screwed up your whole session.
And I'm like, I'm never using these again.
Yeah. So it's definitely 45. They sit there and fall out, but there's a level of separating the pins, and then I take what's in there and then I put them in the dryer. And then once I put them in the dryer and they're dried out, I can basically, when I take them out and pour them out, I can check for pins again. And generally, the drier your brass is, by the time you make that separation, the easier those pins are to fall out. But really, pins are not necessary for almost most of the stuff you're doing. It's just whether or not you want it to look nice. So generally, what's the difference between using pins and not using pins? Do I want my plated bullets to look better than my coated bullets? Coated bullets, no pins.
Right.
So I've always done the dry tumbling, and I had a blood lead level of 7 last year and also the year before. I don't know if that's related to.
What does that mean?
A blood lead level.
Sorry. What's good? 0. I mean,
like 0's good. They don't really. There's no real call to action if you're an adult until you hit like 40. But like the county will give you a call and say, "Hey, your blood lead level. We got results from your doctor. You're at a 7. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I shoot pistols." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Are you doing anything to reduce your lead exposure?" Have any of you guys been tested?
No, I haven't been tested.
Don't really want to be.
I don't really want to be.
I'm worried what the results might be.
I mean, I've slowly learned.
Kenny's got a
not to,
huge
like,
cataract
not
in
to
his
eat
eye.
that
He's having a
sandwich
hard
at
time.
the range.
Don't want the test. I don't want the test. I don't want to know.
You don't have problems if you never get a test. I mean,
Damn right.
Yeah,
Just die and don't know why.
Well, that
He just tipped over. We have no idea why.
that reminds me. I was watching this documentary on people who were getting like replacement hips and replacement knees and stuff like that, and they're having these knees and stuff were made out of cobalt. And as they were wearing, they were shearing on the inside. And like this guy went through like this time where like he like divorced his wife. No one could be around him, and he was a doctor too. And he was just like completely like impotent, ornery, pissed off all the time. And then like his friend doctor was like, "We're gonna go test you real quick," and they found out his cobalt level was like 500%. Anything, and then they pulled open and looked at his hip, and that where you would see like
Grinding apart.
just grinding, just mush in there of cobalt from his artificial hip.
Ugh.
wow.
So it's like there's lead poisoning, but man, that other stuff, you get the wrong prosthetic thrown in there, that is bad news.
Steve, that is why I actually went to the wet stuff, because I was concerned about that. And so I was like, I mean, so like when I do all that, I'll throw the hose in the tumbler after it's gone through and cleaned everything, and I'll just let it. I'll turn it on. And I'll let it run for like 5-10 minutes, and it'll get all the excess stuff out of it. But after that, I mean, I'll go through and I'll sort all the brass out, and I'll go wash my hands out. I've got, what do they call that stuff? It's here it is, the D-lead. Stuff like that, the D-lead.
Soaps.
I have this stuff like all over my house.
Yeah.
Because I'm not paranoid, but I'm not going to take stupid chances,
Yeah.
I would say people do need to take it serious. I used to like freaking bloat and eat at the same time. And then when that crap happened with my fault, I don't know. I'll show you. My dad had so much lead that his arms would start blistering up from the sun because he had so much lead in his blood.
Whoa.
When that happened, I was like, maybe I should be more cautious while I load.
Yeah.
Because he has so much lead, he still has to get bled like every other month to get lead out of his blood.
Damn.
Wow. And where did he get most of his exposure from?
They don't know. I mean, probably from doing dumb shit like I was. He loaded a lot of ammo in his days with pure lead bullets.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Cleaning brass, handling lead, not cleaning up.
Do you load bullets with gloves on? Because I do.
I do now.
Yeah.
the 5,000 pack of gloves at Costco is like $20. Like, and take them off, throw them away. There's no point in just sitting there reusing those things over and over again. Like,
Don't tell Steve that. He will reuse those things until they develop holes. I promise you. I can't guarantee this, but I promise you. This
Steve's
is
like,
a
No,
Steve
of
thing.
course, Robert. Of course.
Steve's like, I'm taking this lead seriously. He's like wet tumbling. He's got new gloves on, and he's got the natty light and a Camelback.
If you tell me I should wear gloves, I will wear gloves and then wash them before I take them off.
With your guys' wet tumbling, did you notice any difference in your brass depending on what temperature water you used before and after?
No. I have done that where I run hot water and cold water, and I have not found an appreciable difference. I mean, maybe there is, but I tried it both ways, and I'm like, well, I'm not seeing a big difference, and the cold water gets it clean, so I'm just gonna go with that.
Well, I took something from one of Mass's classes years ago. It's like anytime I'm doing anything with the brass or handling stuff where it's going to have ammunition stuff and water's always as cold as I can get it.
Just to potentially close up your pores.
Your pores, so you're not letting lead particles into your skin because your pores are all steamed up and opened up. So everything's as cold as the tap will allow it to go. And the other part is too is like when you pop that open before you dump that out, stick the hose in it, let it rinse it out. Just let it get most of the stuff out. Have your gloves on, pour some of the stuff out, let the clean water keep going, and just rinsing that stuff clean before you take it out to handle it.
Yeah, if you put the hose all the way at the bottom of that, just the nature of the water pushing itself up out, you'll actually see all the little particulates being pushed up and right out of it. It's a great way to go.
The next thing I want to do is I just want to get another separator just for the clean stuff, because when you're separating 9, 40, 45 and taking from those big 5-gallon buckets, trying to get everything out, that's the hell zone for that kind of contamination. And then
I do that.
I do
that sorting outside.
Yeah,
but if there's a breeze, I like that even better.
Taking that clean brass and then putting them in that same dirty separator to get the media stuff tumbled out or whatever. It's just like, I need a second one.
All right, from Castle Bravo. Should the shooting sports immediately ban 9mm lung blower from competition, since it now has been deemed too powerful and dangerous by our illustrious leader?
Well,
yes, all 40s.
All 40s. We've been so dumb. When we've been shooting 9mm, we've only gotten one shot per target, and then we have to completely put up a new target. So I think it's a great idea. 30 super carry, everybody. 30 super Tokarev. That's the new round. Kenny, 32 rounds per mag. Have fun.
Yeah.
From Mr. Dirk Hopkins, most of the USPSA shooters do not travel to major matches. What would incentivize the masses to venture outside the normal and get more involved with the sport?
Make a team competition.
Oh, so I think, Robert, when you guys thought we're on with Dave Blanton, cover this perfectly. Majors are just big club matches anymore that cost $400. Make it something different than a club match.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, show people that it's hell. Parma, right?
Yeah.
Show up to Parma. You're going to drive a car, shoot around a car, shoot in a car, shoot out of a car. Like,
Under a
shut
car.
up and take my money. I will do that.
This is the thing with IDPA. And also, we're gonna have a 500 Smith & Wesson pickup gun you're gonna shoot out a bear silhouette with.
Yes.
Come on down. You know what we should do? Full house 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum pickup gun at 2-yard targets.
2 yards.
I want to
That would blow the lungs out of them, though.
That would blow the lungs out. But we need to hit lighter fluid
that's
on the
just
target.
overpowering, because apparently our 9mm will do that all on their own.
You get 3 shots to light the target on fire. We're gonna put lighter fluid on the target, 2 yards, 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. See if it catches on fire. I want
pretty
that
confident in that.
cowboy experience, that Wyatt Earp experience, where they would shoot guys at like 2 feet back in the old Western days, and like their vests would catch on fire, their cotton clothing would catch on fire. How cool
Eyebrows
is that?
catch on fire.
There was that Clint Smith talking about people firing buffalo bore guns in closed rooms in cabins, and like it would blow the candles out in the room. Like, so like gunfighters would have to like think about like what they were using and inside, and like, because after the first shot the lights might go out. That's cool stuff.
I think when the very first major I ever traveled to was an IDPA matchup at Parma, and they, on the Facebook page when I used to be on there a lot, they were talking about this match that was coming up, and I had made a comment, that sounds like fun. And Steve had actually messaged me and said, "Do you want to go?" And I was in the right place in life, and I said yes. But the interesting thing about it, I said I was in the right place in life, and I was. But what it was Steve, me, who's it? Evan Woolley. There was 6, 7 of us who all climbed in the back of Evan's Suburban or whatever it was, and we all drove up. We all squatted together. We stayed in the same place. We basically turned this weekend where we went and we shot this match together as a big group. And I think if you're going to try and incentivize people to go to a major match, go out of town to a major match, I think one of the best ways to do that is you're trying to drive down the costs for them. Because, I mean, obviously not everybody's going to go and fly to a match in Detroit or whatever. But at the same time, if you say, hey, all of us are going to get together, we're going to share a couple hotel rooms, and we'll split the gas, really trying to do this thing on a budget, you're going to take the otherwise, $300-400 that it would cost just to get there on your own, and you're going to kind of drive that price down. And I think
So
that actually goes a long way.
You kind of need a ringleader, and you need kind of a community. You need to have a core of 5 or 6 shooters that are willing to bring new people. People come into the core, people leave the core.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of have a group or 2 or 3 or 4 groups at a club that all have some interest in traveling to a few matches a year together and are friends. And I can't imagine going out of town to a match without. I would not go to a match without like you or Tom. Just by myself, would I go shoot a match? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same here. The one thing too that other sports have is when they actually have like a series where they have like points that accumulate between major matches. The shooting sports have a very hard time doing that because there's no point structure that would make you want to compete in multiple series of majors unless you were like a sponsored shooter. So that
what's the payback on that for your average Joe? Zero.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't exist.
I mean,
the best you can hope for most average people, because if you think about shooting in general, most average people are going to shoot their club matches, and that's really it. But then you're going to have a much smaller set of people who are like, if the conditions were right, I would travel within one state, say about 6 or 7 hours, to shoot a major match there, and they're comfortable with doing that. Especially if you could get, like Steve said, if you could kind of get somebody to kind of organize it and kind of corral everybody, make sure that you got all the conditions in place to do it. I think that actually helps get more and more folks to at least venture out and try. And then maybe along the way, some of those people decide that they really like that sort of thing, and then they'll step up and be the ringleader.
Yeah. The other thing too is like we had that USPSA last year or 2 years ago where we had the team competition where you need to have a low capacity, you could have an open.
Oh, right.
Whatever. Like if open, if major matches, like kind of like the Glock Shooting Sports Foundation kind of does this, they will it's an individual sport, but they will let you sign up a certain amount of teams, like 3-man teams. And then they aggregate your 3-man team score, and they give you a score, and they compare that to the other teams, and then they hand out like a plaque. If there was more of like a team atmosphere of having different guys shoot different divisions, that might incentivize people for trying to fill out teams, and then those people going there to try to have that. So maybe like a team division, and of course, Revolver and PCC, you're not allowed to participate. In fact, don't show up to these matches.
Yeah, that always is kind of. It's kind of.
Well, you can have one PCC for every Revolver shooter on your team.
So basically, no PCCs. No, that is the hard thing with some of that kind of a thing is you have to have a Revolver shooter, and it's like, well, our club has 2, and they're all very well into their retirement.
And one's a black powder Revolver shooter.
Yes.
Did you guys ever shoot? Idaho used to do a major team match. Did any of you guys ever shoot that?
No.
I never heard of it.
That was fun. They don't do it no more. They used to. It was a big match, but it was a team match. Same. You could have 1 open, 1 limited, and then like 2 low cap guys.
You would think that some of the manufacturers would actually like this. I mean, if Glock had an open Glock shooter and a limited Glock shooter and a production Glock shooter and a carry optics Glock shooter, all on a team sitting there competing,
they'd sell more guns.
Sell more guns. Team Glock. They won this. So, all right, let's do one more.
I have one more question before we go to Robert's last question. I was wondering, why is it we find Marvin Heemeyer, the Killdozer man, why is he funny and entertaining, and so many of the other people who lose their shit are not entertaining?
Timothy McVeigh, not entertaining.
Yeah.
You're onto something there, Steve.
Disagree with you.
Well, you can find yourself fascinated with a guy would go to that kind of extreme, but he's not as comical. So I think one of the things that makes it is like
it's a David and Goliath thing. Everybody always is attracted to the David and Goliath stories.
And that like he did basically property damage.
Timothy McVeigh killed what, 70 people or
so? How many more did he kill?
Timothy McVeigh, he killed a few more than that.
I think he killed a few hundred.
Right. How many people did Marvin Heemeyer kill?
0.
Zero.
He actually made a point of not trying to kill people.
Yeah, but he made his point. Like, no one's going to forget. Maybe I already forgot, but
Well, it's like
I celebrate Marvin Heemeyer Day every year.
it's like Sky King. You guys know about Sky King, right? There's this
No.
guy who was a
Sky King.
baggage handler up in Washington,
Oh, that dude was so awesome.
and he just flipped one day, and he's just like, I'm gonna go steal this airplane, and I'm gonna go for a joyride. And he didn't have a pilot's license. He didn't have any of that, and he took a plane and he flew it around. He even did a barrel roll and a loop in a plane that is not able to do such things. And the air traffic controllers were trying to talk him into it. And at the end of it, he said, "You know what, guys? I think I'm just going to sign off." And he put the plane in a dive and he flew it into an island. And he didn't kill anybody or anything like that. So it's like, I think there's a certain amount of us who want to go out on their own terms. And it's like telling people who's out of the will, and so I think there's something in that is it's like people standing in front of a tank, except for the tank standing is much more honorable and heroic. But it's I think we see it as it's an expression of the human spirit, the unconquerable ability of the human spirit to if people wanted to be unconquered, they can be unconquered. And so
I'm a firm believer in being ungovernable, but I think everybody at some point in life has been put in a position where they've done everything right and they've been taken advantage of by people in power. And for most people, it bothers them, and then they can move on, they can let it go. But when you have governments, particularly governments in this particular situation, that take advantage of people, and they use their government authority to basically say rules for thee, but not for me, and they go out of their way to destroy a man's life, and then when that's not enough, they keep going.
Yeah, well,
I think in every man. What is it that Mencken said? At some point in every man's life, you have to spit on your hands, raise the black flag, and start slitting throats. I think that occurs in a lot of people's lives. And Marvin, he said, "Well, you've destroyed everything that I wanted in life. I tried to do everything honorable and reasonable, and I tried to play by the rules. But when you take away everything from me and you give me no other alternate, then I'm going to go out the way that I want to go out."
But he could have gone and shot the mayor and the mayor's secretary and whoever else was in the office that day.
He sure could have, but he didn't.
He could have done that,
Yeah.
and we would not be having this conversation.
Well, it's very interesting.
Oh, there is a certain kind of like mysticism about a man over the course of a year. Was it like a year and a half? He's just slowly building. He's just kind of biding his time, just doing his thing. He's like, Jesus building the whip to go into the temple, right? It's like, I mean, it's not like he just went to the local Walmart in Babylonian times or whatever and picked up a whip. I mean, he's like, getting really pissed off over this whole time. And so it takes a long time to build that entire thing. But
yeah, I just find it's very much John Brown. Is John Brown an American hero, or is John Brown a terrorist? I mean, he took over Harper's Ferry 2 years before the Civil War to steal a bunch of weapons, to run them south, to give to slaves, and to have an uprising. And the United States Marine Corps stopped him. And
the cavalry.
The cavalry stopped him, and they stabbed him with the bayonet. And the only thing that saved his life was a belt buckle. Then he went on trial and basically went through all the moral debauchery that slavery was, and then hung 2 days later and had John Wilkes Booth sneak in to watch the man hang. So,
and became the anthem for the North.
And so
just free slavery.
Yeah, and so my son, when they had to do their wax museum in 5th grade, I chose that he should be John Brown. And so I find John Brown an American hero. In 1883, is he an American hero? No.
No.
But but I think
History has a funny way of
we get to
being
view,
kind.
we get to view the acts in which people take and through the lens of our day and the lens of when they happened then. And so Killdozer is a man getting screwed over by cronies, like a crony kind of capitalist thing in the city, and not basically trying to run him off his land. And so it becomes kind of an open range kind of thing. It's like, I'll do this, and he didn't hurt, kill innocent people or that. So we're able to look at that. John Brown, same thing. It's like he went to do the slavery. And the ironic thing is the guy that died and the first man that was shot in the Hall Harper's very interesting was a free
black man.
Yeah, and so it's like we all get to view it from a different thing and we get to judge it there. But that's the time. Time is the judge of all these acts. And the one things that like Timothy McVeigh and all these people who go on these shootings or whatever is like we still find those as debauchable, horrible acts.
Yeah.
So
we could take this next question next week, but that's a good end.
All right. Well, remember, Ruffles potato chips will screw you any chance they get. Okay.
You don't need any salt licks now.
No, we got.
Tom salted up for the
what
next
if I
week of
ate
sweating.
that? What if I ate that? I would have went into oncoming traffic and caused something terrible, choking. It would have been like, what was that? What was that large black lady? What was that?
How did he die, sir? Well,
it
appears that he was choking on a salt lick. Oh, and COVID.
What was the challenge that people were doing? Where they would take like
the
a
soy sauce challenge.
No,
where you see if you could drink a whole quart of soy
they would
sauce.
they would take like a handful.
Which, by the way, you can't. You will die.
You'll die.
Steven told me the other day. He's like, "Hey, don't ever try and drink a quart of soy sauce because this guy did it, and like, it unbalances your cardiac and your brain chemistry so bad
you'll die.
You will not survive it. They cannot pump your stomach fast enough."
Oh my gosh.
They were taking the powder, a full thing of powder, and like trying to eat it all at one time. And there's this.
You think of the cinnamon challenge?
Oh, the cinnamon challenge.
Cinnamon challenge. No one can eat a tablespoon of cinnamon.
That's what I was. And then I just remember
Stupid
watching
kids.
like this large black lady just go boom, and then and then like the coughing, and then like the spitting, and then like trying to swallow, like trying to drink something, but you can't because you can't get the cinnamon out of your mouth. And then just like watching all these people, but she was the most entertaining because she was like laughing and crying, and then like panicked, all at the same time trying to do this, and she just realized she was just making a killing on the entertainment quality of that video. And on that note, I'm Tom Nelson for Steve Koski, Robert White, and Kenny Terry, bidding you peace, love, and soul as we depart into the open waters of the Sea of Life on a little tugboat we like to call Screws Ruffles Potato Chips.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Good night, everybody.
Toot toot.
That toot toot sounded 36 pounds heavier. All right.
All right. Everybody upload your stuff really fast before you